All right, guys, welcome back to my channel. This is John with Carnivore Backwoods. Today's Carnivore Roundtable is an exciting one. We got a guest speaker here, Dr. Tony Hampton. We'll go ahead and bring him in here. Let's bring him on stage. Dr. Tony Hampton, how are you doing today, sir?
Man, I'm happy to be here in the backwoods. I'm a city boy, so I'm not used to the backwoods, although I was visiting Mississippi recently. My wife's from Port Gibson, Jackson, and those spots. So maybe you can show me around sometime. But life is good, man. I'm doing great.
Well, I want to try to do a meetup at some time in this area. So maybe we'll get you out here for a meetup, do it around the Pigeon Forge, Sevierville area or something.
Okay.
So we got a few others on here for the roundtable today. Let's go ahead and bring in Brian. Wick Goes Carnivore. How you doing today, Brian?
I'm good. How's everybody doing?
Doing good, sir. Doing good.
Doing great.
All right. And we got JT from the Poco Moonshine family.
What's up, everybody? What's up, carnivores?
Hey, JT, right. How you doing today?
Man, I feel like I'm 18, man. I'm on the carnivore diet. I'm feeling good, man.
That's it.
All right. And last but definitely not least, we got Randy here from Ground Beef Guy making up the end of our roundtable here. Glad to have you guys. Dr. Hampton, I appreciate you coming on and being here with us. Today, we're just going to talk about some carnivore, and we'll take questions from the chat, and we'll see what's going on. Let's see here. All right, guys, we've got a few people in here. If you got questions for Dr. Hampton, or any of us for that matter, make sure you put them in there, marking them with a Q. We're going to be looking for those. I expect that we're going to get a decent amount of people in here, so make sure you get the Q in front of your questions so it makes it easy for me to find. So, Dr. Hampton, what have you been going on this week, sir?
Life is pretty busy at clinic. I'm definitely one of the few influencers who's still in clinical practice. A lot of them ended up going to focus on teaching, and we definitely need that because you're not going to get a lot of this information from the clinic. And so if you have people out there, Dr. Berry, Dr. Anthony Chafee, Dr. Baker, et cetera, doing their thing, then what happens is that information that you can't get from your clinical doctor, you can get from those guys. And then the hope is that you can then expose the population. You got to go straight to the people who are being affected, the patient, and then they can then hopefully, from the ground up, it's a ground roots effort, then teach their doctor things that they may not know. And many of the doctors will not be familiar with why a carnivore diet should be on the list of things to consider. They just don't know. They haven't heard of the study with 2,000, even though it was observational, 2,000 carnivores that showed everything got better when they did this dietary pattern. They won't know that they're patients with autoimmune disease and neurodegenerative diseases and mental health issues, that they're going to, get better. They may not know about the keto for refractory mental illness study, which is very much similar to carnivore, and how that just fixed all of these mental health issues. So I think it's going to take the efforts of all of us, which is why I appreciate all of you guys having channels and trying to spread this message that you can heal and you don't have to live with these chronic medical conditions. And so that's why this is important. And I'm going to continue to do my piece. You guys are going to do your part, and we're going to bless people with healing. I've had probably just this past week, at least 5 or 6 stories of healing. A1C is going from 12 to 5 within 3-4 months. The irony is that some of these patients are people that I've been seeing for 10 years, and they just had an aha moment, and I don't know when that's going to happen. And they said, Doc, this lady said to me, she said, in this case, she did keto. She said, I tried that stupid diet you told me about. That's what she called it. And that stupid diet I told her about took her A1C from 14 to 5. So listen, These are not just anecdotal reports of success. There are so many people like Dr. Eric Westman, who's been doing this since 2002, who has since 2002 shown that these dietary patterns where you get rid of these carbs, these plants that are harming you, and you go to an animal-based diet, that's better. There's so many research studies that have been done. And the Public Health Collaborative, when you compare low carb to low fat, there's no competition. And these are randomized controlled trials. So we're not like living in a some bubble of untruth. This is the science, and it's really exciting, again, as this community continues to grow, that although I'm not here to indoctrinate anybody to any dietary pattern, my goal is to expose people to one that may be the one that they've been missing. That's all I'm trying to do. And then let human beings, let Americans decide what's best for them. I don't want to live in a world where we tell our babies, like in New York, you can't eat meat on Mondays and Fridays. I want to live, and I certainly wouldn't want to live in a world where we tell our babies, you can't eat plants on Monday and Friday. I thought this was America. So I just want to live in a place where we give people information, and then they decide what's best for their body. And the best decision maker for that is not Dr. Hampton or anybody else. It's what their body tells them is the best decision. So that's how I see it, man. So I'm excited. About all of it.
That's awesome, because that's exactly, I think, where all of us are. We're all just want to get the information out there. We want to spread the word, but none of us are telling anybody what to do. We're just saying, hey, this is what's working for us. And, let's, we'll tell you what we got going on. You can do it for yourself. You can see how it works for yourself. And then you can make a decision from there. That's how I started. I think that's how all these other guys started. So yeah, that's the great message, sir.
Yeah. Now, for each of you guys, how much, I'm assuming there was weight loss. Was it the weight loss that really was the biggest thing how much success have you guys seen doing this?
All right. Brian, you want to start with that?
Sure. So weight loss really has kind of been secondary for me, but I did need to lose a lot of weight, a lot of body fat, and I still have more to lose. I've lost 80 pounds. And really, for me, again, that was secondary to a lot of health things. I had AFib that I would have a couple episodes a week. I have been on carnivore for just over 15 months, and I have not had an episode in over 14 months.
Yeah.
So that was the huge thing for me that was pretty much healed. Blood pressure was lowered. I have more energy. I got rid of joint pain. I got rid of arthritis, back pain, just so many different health related ailments that are now gone.
Wow. Let me comment real quick, John.
Go ahead.
That AFib is one thing I learned before I even knew a lot about carnivore, ketovore. I became board certified in obesity medicine. And during that training, we learned that if your BMI is 25, your risk for AFib is like baseline, right? And for every BMI over 25, your risk goes up 4%. So I'm not sure what your BMI was, but imagine your BMI was 40, right? 15 times 4, 60% increased risk for AFib just by being overweight and all the inflammation that comes from the fat cells. When you then lose that weight, I have seen in clinical practice exactly what you've seen, which is the AFib kind of goes away. So instead of relying on a beta blocker or some type of, and sometimes you need a beta blocker temporarily, and sometimes you even need a procedure. But why not just get rid of the root cause? And that's what's so beautiful about this approach, is that you get to the root cause and things get better. So, and I'm not surprised about your arthritis with your back and your energy level, your blood pressure. It's all the same disease. So appreciate that.
Outstanding. All right, JT, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. For me, the weight loss, although it was nice, it was secondary, kind of like what Brian was saying. For me, I had terrible IBS, and my gut always felt like crap. I just never felt good. And I think too, I smoked a lot of cannabis, and people are telling me that a lot of the throwing up could have been from too much cannabis, or a mixture of both IBS and too much cannabis. But the smoking and the drinking led me to have terrible sleep apnea. And I don't suggest this to anybody. I was a complete dumbass, and I did not get the machine. I refused to get it, and it almost killed me. I literally had an attitude that I'd rather die, and I had 3 moments where the sleep apnea almost got me. I just would wake up out of a dead sleep, and I don't know if something was blocked or my lungs were just not awake and moving, but I couldn't get air for about 20 minutes. A little bit. It was the air I could get was, and it was the longest 20 minutes of my life, Dr. Hampton. And so for me, I said, man, I want to get, and I had to lay in the tub a lot too to relax. My back would hurt from an accident. I have 3 discs in my back. They're out of alignment. So my bottom of my back is kind of like an upside down question mark. And so I said, man, I was always laying in the tub. I said, I got this. And I saw Kerry from Homestead How just jumping around his homestead, and he was just not like that. I was a Homestead House subscriber, so I was like, man, I want what this guy's got, man. What is he on? So I said, I'm going to do what this crazy guy says, and I'm going to do it. I suggest people do the research. I didn't do the research, but I cannonballed right into it, and my back feels amazing. I have no more IBS problems, and the sleep apnea is gone. I don't go to bed in fear that when I say goodnight to my wife, that might be the last time I speak to her again. You know, I was always so afraid to go to bed because I was like, man, I'm alive right now. I just don't know if I go to sleep, if I'm going to, you know, be alive again. So for me, it was the sleep apnea, and it's gone. So I am so thankful for Kerry sharing his story, and that's why I wanted us to keep sharing our stories, because it's going to help somebody. It's going to save a life.
And I appreciate Kerry because he's been a great connector. Like a lot of the content I've seen of you guys was because of him.
Yeah.
And it's kind of everybody's that's why I'm here today, because we all have to kind of help each other. So for those who are watching, if you're not familiar with the others, subscribe to their channels, and that way you can hear a different spin on how they approach what they're doing. And I will say that IBS is my story, and that's why I decided to take this journey. It was initially my wife, and her diabetes, unfortunately, was type 1, but she has, very good control. And listen, I learned when I was in my functional medicine training, because I have a master's in nutrition and functional medicine, that those, that microbiome and the fiber that feeds the microbiome is why the conventional folk think that you need to eat fiber, because you got to feed your microbiome. And then that microbiome is then going to ultimately lead to small chain fatty acids that will then protect your the lining, those tight junctions in your intestine, so we won't have
suggest the probiotics,
right? And we'll let them have that approach, because when I took probiotics, they did help. But what they don't talk about is, beta hydroxybutyrate is a small chain fatty acid, and when you eat the way we eat, we get our small chain fatty acids from that, and that protects our gut. So this idea that the microbiome has to be varied and it has to look like it does for a person on a high fiber diet is a farce, because ultimately our microbiome is different, but it serves us. And that's why as the Sean Bakers of the world get research out there, then we'll be able to say, for a carnivore, what's a healthy microbiome? For a ketovore, for a person that's low carb, for a person that's on the Mediterranean, it may vary. It's not one size fits all. But what we do know is that when we changed our diet, and if I eat this way, I don't need a probiotic, because my gut is just happy. And so that's how I approach it. And that's why I'm having the exact same experience. And one thing about the cannabis, again, I like whatever works for people. And I have patients who are on cannabis. I'm in Illinois, and it's something
medicinal and recreational.
And I ain't got no problem with that. But I always tell people, just like a medicine, a supplement is also, it's more natural, it's more holistic, but it is something that maybe you could achieve with your diet. So if you need that, having done carnivore, ketovore, that's fine. but you may find you don't need it. So I just think you do what works for you. And I would never demonize a person who's in pain and they're benefiting from cannabis. I mean, that would be
Absolutely.
crazy. But I want to make sure they understand their diet could have probably done the same thing.
Yeah, for me, I quit 27 days in. I literally was getting more high off the ribeyes than the cannabis I was smoking.
Wow,
I said, why am I even? No, really, I literally get such a rush off the
Wow.
ribeyes. I just was like, I don't need pot no more. I'm getting high off steak.
I can't hang with you. Where I grew up, man, you got to smoke a little weed. You
know? Well, I did do a lot of that. I was in the music business. I made beats for Tech 9 and all sorts of stuff. So I've done a lot.
Cool.
Outstanding. Well, Randy, what brought you to Carnivore?
Yeah, let me throw a few things out with the good doctor here. So back in 2013, I found myself at 479 pounds. This is 10 years ago. I went in and had the vertical sleeve gastrectomy, VSG. In about a year's time, I lost about 100 pounds. So 379 was the lowest I got as a result of having the sleeve done. Then I started to gain back, got back up to hovered in the 420s, 430s for the last 8 or 9 years. I've been kind of following the carnivore. I mean, probably I would say when Dr. Barry had less than 1,000 subscribers, I was following. For some reason, I got in way back then, and I've been kind of watching it. And Intentional Carnivore Sean, he's the guy that he really inspired me to really dive into it. So I've been carnivore now. When I started at the beginning of the year, I was 434 pounds in the beginning of this year. Teetered a little bit, fell off. I just yo-yoed some, but I only did like 30 days and had a 50th birthday. I use that as an excuse to fall off. But back in June 3rd, I started on it, and I've been on it since then. I'm 134 days in now, and I'm lower than I was when I had that sleeve done. Mm-hmm. So I'm about 60 pounds down, but I'm going to weigh in this week. I weigh in once a month. So I'm expecting to be about 70 pounds down as of my weigh-in about 135 days or so. One of the questions I wanted to ask, Doctor, is that vertical sleeve. Does it? I mean, obviously the time has passed now. Is there anything that it affects me health wise now? I mean, I don't think I could eat what I could eat prior to that. But I can now, 10 years later, I can eat pretty good. I mean, I can put it down. I don't think I could eat 2 or 3 pounds of ribeye steak in one setting like some people, but just wonder what are some of your thoughts on that? I have that question, and I wanted to ask a little bit about fasting and about glucose levels and stuff like that.
Yeah, and when I got my training in obesity medicine, it's still very. And Dr. Eric Westman, he used to be the president of the organization, the Obesity Association. So he would say they tend to still be medicine centric. They tend to be more surgery centric than we are with our lifestyle. So that's number one. Even though they understand, the sense I got from my training was that low carb, keto, ketovore, all of those things were, effective. They couldn't argue with that. There was still some concern back in the past that saturated fat was an issue, et cetera. But for the most part, they kind of get it now. The gastric sleeve itself, when people have that surgery, it is safer than the gastric bypass, where you're really rearranging things. And with the sleeve, you're just literally turning your stomach into a banana, essentially.
Right.
And when they do that, they take the part of the stomach, the curve, that large curved part that also houses the hormone ghrelin. And as many people have heard, that's the hunger hormone. So one of the advantages of this surgery is that you immediately start to not be as hungry for most people, because the hunger hormone, most of the things that signal that have been removed. In terms of when you have the surgery in the beginning, as a doctor, I worry about, obviously, surgeries, risk of clots and things like that, risk
Right.
of malnutrition, because that's why you have to take the supplements. Your absorptive capacity has been cut down because you don't have as much surface area to absorb. So you have to really make sure you get nutrients. And who knows what's the best source of high quality food? Probably protein, beef and liver and things like that. There's risk for vomiting and nausea and bleeding, obviously, if things don't come together well. So those are the things we worry about. But in terms of long term, I think your stomach will probably do some stretching ultimately. So it'll probably get a little bit bigger over time. And I think that'll allow you to then, consume more of the things you like. So when you're trying to eat that ribeye, and I think you have to be more aware of deficiencies. So you're, and I'm sure they're doing that with your team. They may be
Right.
checking, your B vitamins, your zinc levels, and magnesiums and things like that. So I think from that perspective, there's an issue. But other than that, I wouldn't leave this conversation thinking you should worry much. I think you'll do really well. And I think for people broader, I think the message that you're sharing that I'm hearing is, if I have a surgical intervention, it will work, but it won't work long term if you don't make dietary changes. It just won't.
That's right.
And that's why, I don't know, a large percentage of people, first of all, 1 out of 3 people who have surgery like this will have repeat surgery. And thankfully, it didn't sound like you had repeat surgery. So you're okay
No.
in that, right? But 1 out of 3.
I found carnivore.
Right,
That's my repeat.
That's right. So I think you always try diet first, and it's okay to try this, particularly when your BMI has gotten to where yours got. But the key is, if you then, so most people who do surgery, a gastric band, sleeve, gastric bypass, any of those surgeries should always be thinking, I need to do some type of dietary pattern. Now, we also know, even World News and Report will say the best diet for weight loss is still keto. They may prefer the Mediterranean overall because they don't understand that keto is not harmful, but this is the best diet for weight loss. So if you're trying to maintain weight loss, I don't care if you had gastric sleeve or if you're on Ozempic or Wegovy, right? And I'll say Wegovy because Wegovy and Saxenda are the ones that are really for weight loss, and others are for diabetes. If you're on those drugs, you will regain the weight back when you stop. 80% do. So the goal is you need to incorporate a diet change while you're making those changes. But in terms of you worried about that that you went through, that's fine. I think I would not, and also would give yourself grace. Like, at the time, that was the option that seemed to make the most sense for you, right?
Right.
And that's why we don't want to demonize surgery or drugs. But what we don't want to do is not support people, which is why this community is so important. We need to support people when they're making changes. So, because you're going to look like a unicorn in most settings. They're going to look at you like you're nuts, and they're going to look at you like you're causing harm. So what you do is you have communities like this. I hang with the Steak and Butter gang as well with Bella.
Yeah.
And you give people the type of, like, okay, I have permission. Like, literally, I think Dr. Ken Berry gave me permission. I know you've been following him a lot longer than me,
Yeah.
but when I saw somebody I respected doing something, I said, you know what? And Dr. Anthony Chaffee looked like he's pretty healthy. So does Sean Baker, right? Although
Yeah.
Dr. Paul Saladino is doing some plant stuff, he still looks pretty healthy on this carnivore thing. So when they gave me permission, I said, you know what? I'm going to do my experiment, as they would suggest. Let's try it. And I think you're on the right path, and I would not be worried about anything. I would follow labs and things like that just to keep the conventional docs happy.
Right.
But other than the LDL and total cholesterol, you're probably going to get good news.
So you don't think that 10 years post-op that the fact that I've had that would slow my weight loss in any way? Because I hate to, people, man, they'll jump on you if you compare yourself to other people. But man, when I look at Sean, 240 some pounds in a year. And I was at 434 pounds at the beginning of the year. I was hoping to, I was wanting to drop 200 pounds in a year too would be nice,
There's other factors, right? So when you look at a lab and a test tube, that's one thing. But when you look at a human being, we're very complex, right? And there are so many reasons why one person moves in one direction versus another. For Dr. Paul Saladino and Dr. Sean Baker, and not so much with Dr. Anthony Chafee because he says he's too busy to exercise, right? But those guys Dr. Sean Baker is a pretty intense exerciser. Now, I exercise twice a week. That's it. And and guess what? I'll never look like Anthony Chafee because I am not probably going to do more than twice a week, at least at this stage, because I'm busy and it's just not my thing. You know, I want to be healthy. I've never had a weight problem, just FYI. So I just think that plus, are there other factors in your life? One could just be that you are more insulin resistant. Like you could be at the exact same weight. I don't think that a sumo wrestler is as insulin resistant as another person who weighs the same thing, right?
Right.
You know, partly because of what they're doing exercise wise, but there's other factors. So that's kind of part of the story. And there's other things that should be factored in. Like when I think about my Protecting Your Nest podcast and model, talks about stress, the S's, sleep, how we think, fasting. Like some people are just fasters. They're just doing one meal a day, and that person will probably lose weight faster than the other person. My rope and my acronym talks about relationships. If I come home, my wife's working today. If my wife, that's why I'm with you guys, because she gave me permission. She's working. I'm just throwing that out there. I've been married 30 years. But
Nice.
what happens is, if I'm in a healthy relationship, that'll help me. That'll support me. So you want to start to look at your total life and say, what else have I optimized sleep yet? And if not, is there something I can do to optimize my sleep? When I'm in a stressful situation, do I manage it well? Because if I don't, I'm going to have that cortisol spike. And then in that moment, I may then make glucose through that gluconeogenesis pathway we're familiar with. And all of a sudden, I got extra sugar floating around that will then sabotage my success. So if you're making incremental improvement and you're noticing things that maybe you are not seeing on the scale, rather it's your buckle size, your energy, your ability to focus and concentrate better, you're noticing that your metabolic markers are getting better. You may want to, you have a target in your mind that you've set in terms of where you're trying to go with this. You may want to shift it periodically and say, I see, I hadn't even thought about my headaches are gone or my stomach is less irritable like me and JT, right? So, and if you start to see those things, those are part of how you evaluate your success. And you're a guy, listen, we're all about like, listen, we're very aggressive about, some of us were athletes and we're just like, hey, let's get there. But I would just, as long as you're seeing that incremental improvement while you're also problem solving to see what the barriers are, I think that'll be the way I would approach it. But I think, man, when you're comparing yourself to these, you could argue Dr. Sean Baker and people like him are kind of like outliers, right? Even though Deion Sanders didn't win this weekend, which we thought he would, right, against Stanford, he's an outlier, man. He's a unicorn.
Yeah.
If you compare yourself to him, that's a tough one, right? So that's how I would kind of keep a reasonable head when it comes to this.
All right, well, that's good stuff. So I came to Carnivore unintentionally. I was searching the internet looking for something else related to my gardening, and I ended up hearing a story from another YouTuber who was had a gardening site who started talking about her health journey and how she had improved on Carnivore. And I had been dealing with high blood pressure, I'm not even worried about cholesterol, but high blood pressure, diabetes. And I had a really, really bad episodes of a hemorrhoid that had really caused me some issues. And I knew I needed to lose weight. So my initial drive was, I'm going to lose some weight. And I wasn't really too concerned with the health at that point because I've done the weight loss off and on thing. And it never really improved much on my health wise, but trying to get my weight down was my main focus. And so that's when I started Carnivore. That was back in March 1st. As of today, I've lost just shy. I'm just within a couple points here of hitting 80 pounds of weight loss. I'm no longer diabetic. I've taken my A1C from 7.1 down to 5.7 in my last test. I'm off my metformin. I'm off 90% of my blood pressure medication. I'm pushing closer to coming off my blood pressure medication altogether. My blood pressure is averaging right now about 120 over 80. I think it was 120 over 75 actually, but so things are looking good, and I feel amazing. I don't have the aches, the pains. I thought I was getting old. You start pushing 50, and everybody just makes you convinced that all these things are just part of getting old. Well, all that went away on the carnivore diet. I don't have all those aging pains, as they would refer to it. So, I benefited by the health. That initially I came in it for weight loss, but then after I was in it for, I don't know, 3-4 weeks, I was like, heck, I don't even care if I lose another pound as long as I can feel this way. Mm-hmm. I don't even care about the weight loss at this point. The health improvements were amazing.
Nice. I think, John, to just add context to your comments, and I see one of the questions, and I think we'll answer that question while I'm commenting. It says, have you seen results with other diseases, right? So thank you, DC. Learning to live. I love that, right? So let's comment on
He had
John.
blood cancer, by the way.
Oh, really?
David, yeah. He was homeless with cancer when he got carnivore, so he's killing it.
Man, and again, guys, carnivore is a keto diet, and keto for cancer. For those who are interested in more on cancer, I did a Dr. I think Mercer, but Dr. Mercer and I did a podcast, and we talked about what's the best supplements. Now, of course, some of these supplements are plants, but what does the evidence show for what helps cancer, both for prevention and treatment? So if people search my name in cancer, I think it was like within the last couple of months, I did a class with the doctor whose organization put a monograph together with all the supplements that are helpful. Like, for example, for prevention, if I can recall, it included omega-3, vitamin D, green tea extract. It did have one medicine, which was metformin. I'm not a big medicine guy, but and it had one other that were all related to prevention. Then it had 10 things to deal with when it comes to treatment of cancer. But number one on the list was carb restriction, because cancer cells love sugar as their primary fuel. It's called the Warburg effect. So people on the irony, you eat all this meat, it's supposed to reduce your risk for cancer. It doesn't make sense, but the evidence suggests that that's what happens. So for anybody that has someone in their family who has cancer, who is concerned about cancer because it's in the family, that would be a good episode. And then I would take that list and start to incorporate those things into your diet. Now, when it comes to John's comments about blood pressure, the reason why I want to use that as a great example for all diseases is because when you have three things: your genetics, you can't change your mama and your dad, high dose insulin, or too many carbs. Those are three risk factors which will then increase insulin. There's others, but stress, sleep, and things like that. Now, if you increase insulin, you're in a hyperinsulin state. And I want you guys to think about this in the context of your blood vessels. There are various things that will happen. Number one, you will become insulin resistant because of all that insulin. And when you become insulin resistant, you're going to reduce the production of nitric oxide. And most of us know nitroglycerin is what opens your arteries. So you're going to have arterial constriction. You're going to have an influx of calcium because of hyperinsulinemia. That influx of calcium will then lead to vasoconstriction. So now you have blood vessels that are constricted by two mechanisms, not to mention the stress and inflammation from other causes in your life. You also have, as we know, when you start carnivore, keto, etc., you're going to have diuresis. You're going to lose fluid and electrolytes. But when you're eating carbs and have hyperinsulinemia, you increase the absorption of salt and water. And guess what that does to your blood pressure? It'll increase. So, and when people think about keto flu, they should immediately understand people get keto flu is because your body's so used to having the salt coming into your body because of the carbs, and you literally start to get rid of the salt, and of course your blood pressure is going to go down. That's a good side effect. The key is to reduce your medicines while that's happening. And the last thing I want to mention about hyperinsulinemia is the macrophages and the inflammation that occurs. That's going to then cause problems with your arteries. And all of this leads to hypertension, damage to your blood vessels, and ultimately cardiovascular disease, which is the number one killer. But the key question is what I've been sharing my patients lately. I wonder how many places in your body you have blood vessels. This is one of those dun 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 moments, right? Now we all know that the blood vessels are everywhere. So the question from DC Learning was, I wonder if this is going to help other diseases. And the answer is, so if I had John to pull up metabolic syndrome, and we've all seen that image of a guy with a big belly and those medical conditions, right? And on that image, you'll see high blood pressure, you'll see diabetes, you'll see your lipids being up, you'll see dementia, which is called type 3 diabetes, you'll see cancer, you'll see cardiovascular disease. So, and honestly, they need to make a new image. We need to come up with a new image because there's about 30 plus diseases that are on that list. Polycystic ovarian disease, uterine cancer. So if you are a person who goes to Vegas and you're like, you know what? I got one roll of the dice. That's all I got, right? If I got one roll of the dice, I would focus on reducing your risk for hyperinsulinemia. The best way to do that is to reduce the carbs in your diet. And the most effective elimination diet of carbs is carnivore. Now, if you don't land at carnivore like we have, we're not going to kick you out of the club. We didn't kick, some of us have, but I have not kicked Dr. Paul Saladino out of the club. But what I've done is he decided that a little honey and fruit's okay for him. My wife's got type 1 diabetes. I would dare give her honey or fruit. And I guarantee if I give her a banana, which is 7 teaspoons of sugar, guess what her sugar is going to do? It's going to spike. So in our household, we're not doing that. In his household, Mr. Perfect Body, exercise guy, that may work for him and his family. And that's okay. And I got nothing but love for him. But what I'm saying is you have to individualize it. If you're a person with metabolic disease or diabetes, it's probably you're going to be pushing your envelope. And now if you do that experiment because you've become metabolically healthy and you've been that way for a year and your body tends to tolerate more, that's okay. But my experience has been it's not going to tolerate it. You can try it, but and who knows? A lot of times it's, what's the best decision maker for you if you're a person with the diabetes? It's the meter and it's the continuous glucose monitor. So if you eat something and you get a spike, then you need to stop eating that. And what we do know is that although protein will increase your sugar a little bit, it's nothing compared to carbs. And more than likely, your body can manage that quite well. So I think to answer that question, it helps with most diseases. The most effective, of course, is mental health, autoimmune, neurodegenerative diseases. Obviously epilepsy would be an example. And I would say metabolic diseases in general, but the first three are the ones where if you have an autoimmune disease, and I would argue IBS is probably one that me and JDT suffers from, it's a game changer. And I know you can testify to this, JT. When you get your belly back, Lord have mercy.
When you don't feel it no more.
You don't know it exists.
That's the best part, man. I've heard you say that before, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you don't feel it, you don't know how good it feels to not feel something.
You don't. I just didn't think.
That reminds me, you cut your hand and you wanted to help people not feel pain.
You remember that? Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's it. Like when I had my little, and I appreciate that. It's hard to see, but it's like
there it
right
is.
a little slither there.
Hey, thank God for that cut, man, because it
That
led you
cut made
towards
all the
us.
difference, right? And I told my mom as they were putting that medicine in my hand, how can I not feel this person doing this stitch? And the doctor says to me, I said, I want to be a doctor. I want to be like you. I want to be able to take people out of pain. And I didn't know that this knowledge would then take me out of pain. I did not know that my wife's sugars, instead of doing this and being more level, would be helpful for not just my wife, but my relationship with her. Because what kind of person is going to be a great spouse if their sugar's doing that? How's that going to affect their mood and their ability to be calm? And when she talks to our kids and how, so everything gets better. When I'm standing at, Keto Palooza or Keto Orlando, my mental clarity is there because I eat this way, and I'm not freaking out because, and I'm not thinking about food because we don't get hungry like that. And people don't believe it. They don't believe that we don't get hungry, but we just don't. Like we eat sometimes. We have to eat, but we don't sit around thinking about food all day. So,
Hey, Dr. Hampton, I had a quick question. Talking about glucose and that kind of thing. Is there an optimal number does it vary among individuals for weight loss? I guess does that make sense? I mean, I know the insulin resistance thing.
Yeah, I think you have to be, again, that's why we need the research, right? Because what's the optimal A1C, right? Like, and when I was keto, my A1C was more like 5.1. It's more like 5.5 on carnivore. Isn't that weird? So I have seen that carnivores tend to have a slightly higher A1C, maybe because of the protein. Who knows? The question is that a problem? And the answer is probably not. Because when you look at the other, because we're going to measure other things, right? We're going to look at the, to be fancy, apoprotein beta A ratio. That's a great risk for heart disease measurement. We're going to look at the triglycerides to HDL ratio. We're going to look at the C-peptide. We're going to look at the homocysteine and the C-reactive protein and the LDL particle sizes. And so the more you look at those measurements, you're fine. So the first answer to this question is don't just focus on one measurement. That's kind of going down a rabbit hole that's going to freak you out. Definitely don't focus on the LDL and the total cholesterol. That's why you want to do particle sizes to at least see if they're small or large. And if they're small, more concern. If they're large, less concern. And so I wouldn't be surprised. I don't expect your A1C to be 6.2, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 5.6 or 5.7 or 5, and that's okay. Because, are we like machines or are we humans, right? So do we have to be at such a narrow, perfect range to be healthy? And the answer is no. You're going to look again at the totality of how you're doing. Are you healthier, 100 pounds lighter than you were? And the answer is, of course. So if somebody stands before you and says, oh, you see that carnivore diet raised your A1C just a little bit, or your LDL is higher, and then everything else is better, then I would argue that it's nuance. It's like, even when you talk about things we shouldn't talk about, like the war and politics, it's nuance. We have these extreme views, but we don't talk about nuance. And if we start talking about nuance, then we'll be able to say, hadn't thought about that. That makes sense. So for you, they say your fasting should be between 70 and 100, right? And I anticipate it probably will be. But if it's like 105, should I get nervous? The answer is no. I just think that's worried about something you shouldn't be worried about. And again, this is in the context of knowing we don't have the data for the carnivore diet yet. We just have observational studies. In 5 years, my hope is that the money Sean Baker has raised and others, and there will be others, because even Dr. Georgia Ede, who did the keto for refractory mental illness, who was at Harvard, who's now a psychiatrist, many of you know her. Those types of folk are going to be doing research studies. And as we do more studies, we'll be able to kind of prove and feel better. But even when those studies are done, you're still going to be your own litmus test. You're still going to use your experience as the number one determinant of what you should do. because these are studies using people, some of whom are different than you. And there are people, and we already know from studies that if you're too thin, you have a higher mortality rate. So what's the ideal body weight for you? And the answer is, I don't think we really know. But what we do know is if all those things that we worry about improve, then that's probably the ideal body weight for you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So we've made it all the way around here. I got some highlighted comments that I'm going to go through here and make sure. I think there's any more questions. Okay. So let's go with this one here. This is a highlighted comment. That's one of the best eye-opening benefits of carnivore is learning that you are in charge of what your health will be. It's not medicine. It's a diet. We are no longer slaves to the plants. And then moving on to the next one here. Good afternoon, Southside Chicago in the house. Just like to thank Dr. Hampton for taking his time and sharing his knowledge on channels like this. Is that one of your fellow Chicagoans there?
You better know it. I love it.
And then we got a question here. It says, I've lowered my BP and A1C, but still have waistline that is 38, putting me still needing to improve my metabolic health. I'm eating mostly carnivore. Will things continue to improve? Question.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna definitely say yes. And I think it goes back to how we're gonna measure other things. If she's one of the problems with carnivore is that it's so good at building muscle. And if you think about Dr. Anthony Chaffee as an example, he says he doesn't have time to exercise that often. Now we know he exercises some. In fact, the video that I watched more recently where he said he didn't exercise much, he said, after I finished recording, I'm going to exercise. So we know he exercises, right? So, but because you're losing fat, but because of all that amino acid, you may be gaining muscle. So part of it is there may be some muscle gain, particularly if you're doing any form of exercise. How long you're doing it matters, and it took us years to get to where we are. So it may take a little time to get to where you're trying to go. So I would just focus on, again, let's measure some other stuff. Going back to what I mentioned, the fasting insulin, the apoprotein beta A ratio, the cholesterol particle sizes, the C-peptide, the homocysteine, the C-reactive protein, the set rate. Let's measure some of those things. If they're getting better, I would focus in that area and make sure you're just doing what stay the course. If you are, you should be keto adaptive by now. So, or fat adaptive, meaning your body is using fat as its primary fuel. So in that setting, let's not eat when we don't need to be eating. So intermittent fasting is perfect. People who are doing this dietary pattern, because they use fat for fuel and they have fat on their belly, so if you fast and maybe get down, I tried eating like between 4 and 8, but I just couldn't get enough protein in. So I kind of tend to do a 12 to 8. Maybe you can tolerate a 4 to 8. Maybe you can tolerate a 1 meal a day. I would consider that. I would push that water because water is very important for allowing you to lose weight because of just how all the metabolic processes work. But as a general rule, I do expect things to improve.
If you talk to Dr. Chaffee, let him know I'm trying to get a hold of him. We're trying to get him on a carnivore calendar for the ladies so we can secure the rest of our funds for the documentary. It'd be a seller. Just let him know, man. Carnivore calendar, 12
I
months.
like that.
Let's go.
Yeah, if Dr. Anthony Chaffee's not on a carnivore calendar, oh my God, that would be a
right instant hit with the ladies.
Yeah, we got to have
funds.
him.
We're all good to go. Let's film.
Let's do it. Yeah. Well, I'll put that word out.
Fast,
right, I appreciate it.
Dr. Tony, one of the things that I noticed on this conversation about lowering BP and A1C is I was on HCTZ for my blood pressure, and it was keeping my insulin high. And once I got off of that, that helped lower my insulin, which then improved my weight loss. That's something that I noticed on it. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I like that. Water pills are very interesting because they make you get rid of water, and it reduces the the volume of blood in your arteries, and they can give you side effects and things like that, dizziness, headache, nausea, and things like that. So in your case, you found when you got off the water pill, what happened again?
So my blood pressure was continuously coming down, and I got to a point where it got so low I started to get dizzy and lightheaded
Yeah,
if I bent
absolutely.
over. And so then we came off of the HCTZ. But one of the things I noticed from my lab is that my insulin levels were still high, and that's one of the
Oh,
side
got
effects.
you.
And so,
Okay.
but
So
once I came off the HCTZ, and I know this happened for Sean, intentional carnivore too, because he was on the same thing. My weight loss just kicked back into gear. I had been stalled for weeks there, and when I came off that medication, my metabolic kicked in, and I started losing weight again.
that's interesting. Yeah, my understanding about that drug, interesting enough, is that it typically inhibits insulin resistance, typically, and then so that's interesting. That is, well, actually, I'm thinking back now. Like, I remember a while ago when I saw a study, because you would think that HCTZ is going to be beneficial, but I remember there was a mice study, and they found that the mice who took it actually had more problems with glucose tolerance. Interesting enough. So my gut, and I think if we search this, and we probably look this up, I would do a search and see if there's like a HCTZ study with mice. And I bet you $1 million in that study, it'll show that it actually harmed the mice in terms of insulin resistance. So that's all that comes to mind. But that's what so I think that it may be that's what's going on. Now, of course, you're not a mice, but I think that's probably what was going on. That drug, there's so much noise in medicine, and with so much noise, what happens is we don't think about the potential side effects of medicine that's supposed to be helping us. So, for example, if you're taking a beta blocker, it increases weight gain. If you're taking a antihistamine, it increases weight gain. So if you don't know that, then you're like, why am I not losing weight? Well, because you're still taking an antihistamine, even if it's a nasal spray. So that's the problem. So, and I think I'm going to take a quick search on my computer and see if I can find that. And it looks like I see this one study. A little complicated sounding study, but I do see a study in Science Direct that does say that the hydrochlorothiazide did lead to some problems with glucose metabolism. And it says mice fed HCTZ had impaired glucose tolerance. So we can't extrapolate automatically to humans, but I think that that's probably what happened to you, is that it was affecting you in a way that was not favorable, and that's why it got better. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I had not thought. So many patients that I see have this drug on their profile, and I don't think I even thought about it. So I think we need to start thinking about that drug, and may not be the best drug for people who are at risk for diabetes or who are concerned about that. That's crazy. There's just so much out there, man, we're trying to keep up with. So
and I've been on that drug since I was like 24, 25 years old. That was the first thing they put me on was benzapril and HCTZ, and I've been on that.
Okay.
Since I was 25, when they started trying to control my blood pressure. And then even when I lost weight back in 2012, I started doing a calorie restriction, started exercising, and I got down to about the weight I'm at now. My blood pressure never came down, came down a little bit, but it didn't come down like it did on carnivore. And I have a video on this where I actually documented month in and month out my blood pressure as I was on carnivore. I really started in April of documenting, but you can actually watch my blood pressure drop, and then you can see where I came off a pill and it went up a little bit, but then it came right back down. So it's been a real interesting thing for me to watch and just keep track of as I've gone down this road. And like I said, I'm just down to one benzapril a day where I was taking two. I was taking HCTZ. So I'm super excited to be off medicine. I'd much rather cure my problems than medicate them.
Yeah, and this will be a great nugget for anybody, since so many people take hydrochlorothiazide and so many people take those ACE inhibitors like lisinopril, captopril, etc. This is a nice nugget for people to kind of say, if you're having some disconnect between all of these changes and your A1C is not quite responding and your blood pressure has gotten better, now we're going to really push our clinician to maybe I'm doing well, my blood pressure is okay. Can we do a trial off this medicine? And if I'm doing better, and then you check your labs, you may have the same experience John had, but that's a nice nugget for anybody. And again, that's probably the most commonly starting drug for blood pressure is the water pill, because it's the one with the least, we thought, side effects. So let's put that out there. And this is how people become their own doctor in a way. They get a nugget, they respectfully bring it to the attention of their clinician, and they do a little bit of an experiment. But the goal is, if I don't have to be on medicine ultimately down the road, and we don't get off medicine until we've healed, then I don't have to worry about that side effect. So that's why I'm so happy for you, and that your life has transitioned to one where you've healed and you don't have to take these medicines chronically.
Absolutely. Let's grab this next question here. We got Meeting Wellness says, what can I say to my doctor who told me that if my cholesterol comes back high on blood work, I am clogging my arteries with plaque? She also said a keto diet is not anti-inflammatory.
I think, the first thing you say to people is that finally large organizations endorse keto. So if the doctor's not aware, I remember when A-Day Fox, the Black Carnivore, was active. She's not active now. And if you search my name and A-Day Fox, or just search my name in the American Heart Association, you'll see the announcement that we're familiar with when the American Heart Association endorsed low carb, right? And when they endorse low carb, they also endorse keto. It's in small print though. And so if you click into the show notes for that video, it'll give you a link to that announcement that they made. And in that announcement, it'll show that keto was okay. So if the American Heart Association says it's okay, although we don't make our decisions based on them, we kind of know that's a rabbit hole we don't want to go down, then that should provide a conventional doc with some proof. That doctor also needs to know that the American Diabetes Association and the Society for Clinical Endocrinology, they all endorse low carb. So so I would start there. Number two, when it comes to the cholesterol, there are so many things that we've learned about cholesterol not being a great determinant of your risk for heart disease. So I even did a video about that. Just Dr. Tony Hampton, LDL cholesterol and total cholesterol, if that's the baseline, our blood pressure is 1.9 times more predictive of a future heart attack than our cholesterol and LDL. Our fasting insulin is 6.7 times more predictive of a future heart attack. So that would be another resource in the study that it came from that showed that to rely on the cholesterol and the LDL is a farce. More importantly, now let's be clear. If you're talking to a doctor, they're not going to be able to handle any of this because it's too much challenging. It's like, but I just want to put it out there for you so you're comfortable. The other thing that most of us are aware of is that when you look at studies, and it may have been in that same video, and I know others have talked about it, more people have heart attacks with a low LDL than a high LDL. That's just fact based on randomized controlled trials. So for a person to think keto is inflammatory, is based on old news. It's based on those old studies that were done with surveys and data mining. They were not based on randomized controlled trials. So these have been debunked already. And what I would say to the doctor is that let's do a couple of things. Let's get a coronary artery calcium score test. So if you decide to stay with a doctor who does not know the new information, I would say to that doctor, if my calcium score is low, and then when we agree to follow that, as long as it doesn't go up, then we're good. And then all those things we talked about earlier, those other tests, we're not going to do LDL. We're going to do LDL particle sizes. We're going to do the triglycerides ratio, the apolipoprotein beta-8 ratio, the SET rates, the CRPs, the homocysteines, the C-peptides, and those types of tests. A1Cs. And if those numbers are showing improvement, and the only thing on my labs are cholesterol and LDL, would you walk with me following these other labs? And as long as those things are doing well, I can be your patient. You can be my doctor. If after giving them a reasonable collaborative approach, and they say, I can't do that, then I would go to this Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, Diet Doctor, or Low Carb USA doctor search and search for a doctor who wants to work in partnership with you. I want a doctor who has the heart of a teacher. I listen to Dave Ramsey, who's in Tennessee, and that, the financial guy, right? And he always talks about, I need somebody who has the heart of a teacher. If my doctor is not willing to walk with me and be a teacher, and to then and agree to disagree, all relationships disagree. But if we can walk together and kind of work together and come with an agreeable approach, that's what I would do. I do not want people to just leave their conventional docs, because there's not enough metabolic docs out there like myself. We just want to see if we can work with them and maybe give them some information that they had not heard. And if they are comfortable with that approach, that's how I would approach this.
You're muted, John.
Sorry, I mute myself out so I'm not coughing in the background. Anyway, so you would recommend a full lipid test on the next time they go in?
I think so. Get the lipid particle sizes. Also inquire with your insurer, because the particle sizes, they may not cover that, because they don't consider that. They may, and in our health system, a coronary artery calcium score, I think we all, once you're 35, we all should get that, 35 and up. But I would do those tests to say, hey, I'm doing pretty good. I mean, you're concerned about my cholesterol, but my calcium score is 0. So I would probably have some plaquing by now. So since I don't, can we keep, working on what we're doing, and just let me work on my diet, and I'll try to be a good patient otherwise. But I don't want to have the high risk of, 68% increased risk for diabetes if I'm on a statin. Some people, are there people that can benefit from a statin? Absolutely. If you've had a heart attack, maybe you can argue that. But for most people, even in that same article with the American Heart Association, they say if you have a CA score of 0 and you're diabetic, you do not need to be on the statin. I am not saying publicly that everybody following us today get off their statins because their doctor would have a fit. But what I'm saying is that, because it's not standard of care yet, because even when the American Heart Association says something, it doesn't become standard, because there's other organizations, they all have to get in cahoots with each other and make a decision. But what I am saying is that based on what they publish, if you have a 0 calcium score and you're diabetic, you do not have to be on the statin. That's just fact. So what I tell my patients, stop being a diabetic. Let's reverse it. And then once you're not a diabetic, we can get you off a statin. That's kind of my angle, to kind of sell the diet and to convince them that that's the path. You could argue a person who's diabetic, they have a equal risk of a heart attack compared to a person who's already had a heart attack. So that's a real data point, right? But if you get rid of the root cause, which is the inflammation from diabetes and the glycation and all the things that occur, then maybe at that point there's no need to take the medicine. So that's so if you get a 0 calcium score and your other tests like the particle sizes look okay, I would roll with the diet and then repeat at maybe in a year, couple of years, and then if things are still going well, you can still work with that doctor and still stay on that diet.
Fix your diet, fix your diabetes, right?
Amen. You better say it. You're a good marketing person.
Yeah, that's just, if you guys are wondering why I just said that, that's a book that Dr. Tony Hampton wrote. So check it out. Fix your diet, fix your diabetes.
And I need to change the cover because back then the cover doesn't reflect, like it's more like it's got some stuff on that cover. So I got to work on it. I told my wife I got to fix that because the information is good, but the cover, you're just looking for a cover, and I need to fix that. So just a FYI.
Quick question: are you a Chicago Bears fan?
Oh man, you're killing me.
I've been wondering the whole time, man. If you
Oh
are,
my
I won't hold
God.
it against
Yeah,
you.
I have my fraternity jacket on, but I'm a Chicago. I'm so hardcore Chicago, man. I've been praying for our quarterback. I know he had a couple of good games recently. A lot of people are still kind of iffy about has he turned a corner, because at the end of the day, we know he's talented, but has he turned a corner? So yeah, I reluctantly say I'm a Bears fan.
I
but
won't hold it against you. It's okay.
yeah, don't kill me, man. But I will say this: we're in 6 states as a health system, Advocate Health, and when we merged with Aurora, which is in Wisconsin, I had to grit my teeth. I have to deal with the Milwaukee Bucks. I got to deal.
I
deal
grew
with
up
the
a Bulls
Packers.
fan. I was a Michael Jordan fan, so
Oh yeah,
I grew up a Bulls fan.
Yeah, I'm a huge Chicago. I mean, literally, Blackhawks, whoever. If it says Chicago, I'm all in.
Okay. I was just wondering. We can get back
That's
to
cool.
Carnivore.
Before we move on to the next question here, you guys, anybody want to ask anything from the table here before we move on?
Just one thing, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll let you guys. You mentioned that I just want to get in the mind of a doctor, because you were talking with Dr. Kiltz, and you guys were just spitting gold. You mentioned that you kind of were caught in like a matrix thought mindset where you were following the guidelines, and then if the people weren't doing good with those old guidelines, that you kind of thought, well, maybe they just weren't listening to you as a doctor. Do you think that's the mindset that a lot of doctors are caught in right now?
Yeah, it is because if you've been indoctrinated into the assumption that the World Health Organization and the people who make the nutritional guidelines do their due diligence. All doctors believe that when they put this information out, it's based on high quality studies. They don't know that it's not, and that even when it comes to that meat question, and Nina Teicholz will clearly state, when this correlation between meat and cancer came out, of the, I think it was 14 or 15 studies they used, all were observational. So on its face, we should say that's not real science. That's just association correlation. But the average doctor thinks it was causation. A equals B. None of them were randomized controlled trials. And oh, by the way, 8 of them did not show a correlation between meat and cancer. And then maybe another 6 or so only showed possible. And only one that showed a correlation was the one that was done at Loma Linda. And there was this unhealthy user bias thing that kicked in with that one. So because the people who tend to eat meat tend to eat a lot of other crap, that at least meat not being one of the craps, but the other crap that comes with the meat. Mm-hmm. So doctors are penalized, not like a nutrition professional, but if you don't follow the standard of care, then you're penalized. The standard of care says follow the dietary guidelines. The standard of care says everybody plus their mama should be on a statin. And the new drug that's hot is Jardiance. Everybody should be on Jardiance, which makes you pee out glucose, which is ridiculous on its face, when you should just tell people not to consume the things that turn into glucose. But so everything is medicine centric. And all we're saying to the public is we want to focus on the root cause of why you had congestive heart failure, not just to put you on a pill. We want to focus on the root cause of your blood pressure, your diabetes. And if all else fails, medicines make a ton of sense. Or while you're healing, take the medicine with the idea that you're going to get off the medicine. But doctors are not trained to think that way. They're trained to think, take the medicine to manage your disease. The dietary guidelines you must follow. And if you're not doing well, it's because you're not following the dietary guidelines. And the Mediterranean diet, which all my colleagues recommend, will tell you to eat grains, which will absolutely increase your blood sugar. But they don't look at the outcomes as much as they look at that's what we're told to tell you. So a low carb Mediterranean diet is probably ideal for some people. A regular Mediterranean diet, in my opinion, if you're diabetic, doesn't make any sense. If you eat quinoa, your sugar is going to go up, period. So I just think that patients should follow the numbers and go by the outcome. So if your blood sugar spikes, and again, we said in the beginning that hyperinsulinemia is the cause of all of these chronic conditions for the most part. So if you're spiking, or if you're not even diabetic and you just happen to get access to a continuous glucose monitor, the diet will reveal itself. You'll see those spikes and you'll avoid it. So so I feel doctors are not trained to think beyond the medicine, surgeries, and procedures. And that's what leads to them only relying on medicine, surgeries, and procedures. And they don't even, if you go to a doctor and say, I was thinking about berberine as a supplement, they don't know what to say. They don't know what to tell you because they're not trained to tell you. Even a simple thing like CoQ10, they can give you a surface level answer. But if you start asking them more detailed questions, they don't know. So we have to change our health system to ensure that doctors have a little bit more knowledge, or at least have a health system that can then say, hey, we have a team of people who will honor your dietary pattern, but tell you what you need to know. If you're carnivore, you may need some electrolytes. Like if you're eating liver once or twice a week or some supplement, you may not need electrolytes. But if you're not, you may need electrolytes. I didn't start taking I take Keto Chow's electrolytes, right? They're electrolytes and mineral, and I have to look at Ken Berry's face every day. It drives me crazy because he's on the bottle. Shout out to Ken Berry. But I found that helps me because some nights I was getting crampy. So okay, I take electrolytes. I take omega-3 because I don't eat enough fish. I like steak, right? I take vitamin D because it's dark skin, and even the lighter skins I see on this panel, I don't get enough vitamin D from the sun. So I do take a few things, but for most of us, you just have to. We want doctors to just know, oh, you're carnivore. These are the things you need to think about. Oh, you're plant-based. It's going to be a longer list, but these are the things that you need to think about. But doctors don't know. So they have good intentions, but they're judged on whether or not you were put on a statin. They're judged on whether or not you referred them to the eye doctor. They're not necessarily judged. There's some judgment on outcomes. We don't get paid to heal people. We get paid to put people on the right medicine and to do the things that they consider standard of care. But the outcomes, if they don't reach the outcomes to patients, then we say something's wrong with the patient. And that's just not factually true.
Do you think there's hope for a change in the system?
Well, I'm in a large health system. So my job is to not leave the large health system and make change within. Now, my role is a little different. I have face-to-face interactions, but I also help lead food pharmacies. And we have a smart farm where we grow food and we bring it to the pharmacy. And we have diabetes and COPD prevention programs, and we teach these concepts there. And then we think about social determinants of health, economics, food deserts. I can't exercise outside because they're shooting. How do we then support people? How do we coach people? Health equity. Why do some people not do well in healthcare when other people do, just because of their race? So I have to think about removing those barriers. So my role is to focus in that. And then while we're doing that, oh, by the way, having access to food is health equity. Understanding that certain communities have less access than others is health equity. So we do that, and we make sure everybody feels when they come into our doors that they feel that we understand their struggle. And when I was in Keto Palooza, when we talked there, I talked a little bit about that and how if you, and the illustration, you've seen this maybe, where you have two trees and the apples are at the same height. So everybody can get an apple equally. The question is, can everybody get an apple equally? And everybody was at different heights, and the short person can't reach the apple. But you're saying, well, it's fair because it's at the same height. The question is, we need to put some stools under the short person. And the question is that fair to the person who can reach the apple already? And I'm saying it is fair once that person understands that the short person needs to have a way to get. And an example of that could be, you have somebody in front of you that's in a abusive marriage, and you've given them all the carnivore and keto information, and you're like, what's wrong with them? There's nothing wrong with them. They're in a dysfunctional marriage. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are in some communities, we don't even want our women to be too skinny. So the guy is like, I don't want you to lose weight. I know it's going to help you not have diabetes and hypertension. So how do you have a conversation with that husband and say, you know what? She'll still look cute if she's a little skinnier. I mean, seriously, this sounds crazy, but you have to, why do people struggle, and what we can do as a health system and as a clinician, and in your case as social media influencers, to help everybody with their particular struggle and stop looking at them like there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them. It's something wrong with us because we haven't figured out how to help them. That's how I look. I'm going to do some self-reflection. Where do I have gaps as a doctor or a leader that's preventing me from reaching the audience that I need to reach? And sometimes it will come back to that person, but many times it's because we haven't given them the tools to be successful. And that's how I'll always look at myself first before I look at the person in front of me.
It's all an awareness, right?
Awareness. Yes. There you go.
You're muted again, John.
I have the same problem. Whenever I mute myself, I always forget to unmute myself.
There it is. Just trying to be quiet and respectful back there.
That's
not
right.
on everything. All right. So anyways, we got 6 questions lined up here. I got starred, so we'll work our way through here. Start with this one here. It's so frustrating for me to stay the course. I'm definitely a food and sugar addict. My question is, how do I stay on the course? ? I want to get a coach, but they are way too expensive.
They are expensive. Even Dr. Joan Iflin's reset community. So if, I have a link tree. So Dr. Tony Hampton link tree. And I think one of the links is with Dr. Joan Iflin's reset community. And the questionnaire is based on, for processed food addiction, is based on the alcohol addiction questions, right? 11 of them. So if you do those, she already, is saying, peachy, I like that, that she's got an addiction, but I would still go through those questions. And then, but you're still talking about $59 a month, right? That's still real money. I know the Steak and Butter Gang, they have, I think it's probably $30 a month. So everything, there's a cost, right, to get support. And we have coaching in our health system. So I think recognizing you have a problem is the first thing you do. And I think for this one question, I do think that if it's a group thing like the Steak and Butter Gang, and there's others, that may be at a cost point, $30, where you can handle that. I would try to handle that, because for $30 a month, that may be the missing link. So I don't care if you just don't go to Starbucks a couple of times. Not that you're drinking coffee, because some carnivores don't drink coffee, but that's what I would do, because I think the support is, when Dr. Tro did his study with the industrial company, and it was more keto, and they found tremendous results, reduced the cost of care to the industrial company for the employees by $4,000 per patient per year. 80% of that success was not keto. It was coaching. We need coaching. So I agree with this. I agree with Peachy that I need support, and I would find $30 a month to at least do that. Now, if you're really a processed food addicted person, I would get that $59 a month with Dr. Joan Iflin. It's 14 hours per day of like Zoom meetings. You can listen in while you're cooking or whatever, while you're driving, or you can participate or just listen. And what they found is that that's the level of support that you need, because those neurons in your brain that are addictive neurons, they don't go away. They go dormant. But as soon as you drive by Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, they wake up and say, hey, it's just one little donut won't hurt, you know, just one donut.
Yeah.
And then you go right down that little, you wake that neuron up and it's like, hey, I miss you. I'm here now. So
And then the whole dozen's gone, right?
That's right. And man, Krispy Kreme, my wife was pregnant, man. There was a new Krispy Kreme, and she was from the South, so she had heard of Krispy Kreme. But when it came to Illinois, man, I had to drive 30 minutes to Krispy Kreme, and she insisted, if the light's not on, wait until it comes on. She wanted them donuts to be hot.
A hot light.
It's crazy. That's right. Anyway, that's how I would answer that question.
Hey, I wanted. Can I chime in on this question?
Oh yeah, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say to Peachy Pam and Marilyn there, Pam, thanks for watching here, but doing what you're doing right now, watching these lives, getting in the community on some of these Facebook communities, man, has helped me so much. Larry and Cassie at Carnivore Quest, the Intentional Carnivore, Sean White's got a group, Carnivorous Community, I believe it is. Just finding some of these communities, and there's been days that I've sat, somewhere and wanted to go get a bag of peanut M&Ms or hit the Krispy Kreme, because down here in South Carolina we got Krispy Kremes on every corner. But and I've jumped in those groups and maybe expressed what's going on, and people have come back and been so supportive. There's a lot of really good supportive type groups out there. And then if you follow these different YouTube channels, it seems like the more carnivore is taken off, that people are there's a lot of live streams like this going on. So you can jump in there and man, how blessed are we to have, like right now, you can hear from a doctor. Dr. Tony Hampton's on here talking about, the questions that everybody's got. So those are just some of the ways that you can try to get your mind off of those things that are ultimately trying to really beat us up and kill us.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Anybody else want to jump in there? Nope, they are quiet. No, I'm not muted. I'm just making sure. All right. Moving on to the next question. I got hypothyroidism. I think I said that horribly, but there it is. I'm currently taking Wegovy for weight loss. My fiance and I are transitioning to keto carnivore. Both of us are mainly doing for the weight loss. What are other benefits on carnivore?
I think the first thing is to start by saying we're going to do medicines like Wegovy as bridge therapy. So the benefit of carnivore is that Wegovy slows gastric emptying. So does carnivore, right? Wegovy releases insulin more on demand instead of just giving you too much insulin, because we don't want hyperinsulinemia. When you eat a keto or carnivore dietary pattern, you tend to get most of your glucose than insulin when you break down fat and protein. So it's more on demand instead of just consuming stuff that puts glucose in your blood. So just because Wegovy and Ozempic and Mounjaro and Saxenda and Trulicity, all these GLP-1s, they all have the risk of the following. Number one, increased risk for suicide in people who are at risk for suicide. That's in England, and that's what the studies are starting to show. Increased risk of thyroid tumors, increased risk for pancreatitis, increased risk for that gastric slowing to turn into where the stomach just stops working. So that's a problem. So what you want to do is, one more, protein. When you take Wegovy, you lose muscle and fat. When you do carnivore, you lose fat, but you gain muscle. You don't lose it. So if you do this temporarily as a bridge therapy, and because you've not been successful, I think that's fine. But you will have the same benefit: gastric slowing, making you feel full, increasing insulin on demand, and most importantly, not being hungry doing carnivore. So I would really tighten up your carnivore keto game, and then start the process of transitioning off of that medicine as soon as you feel like you're ready. Carnivore, the benefits are endless. For many of we talked about the GI benefits, but most of it goes back to what I said: autoimmune diseases, behavioral health, things like depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, seizures, and other neurodegenerative diseases, things that deal with the nervous system, metabolic diseases. So the benefits are unlimited. And I just encourage you to just stay the course and just anticipate you'll just be doing this medicine temporarily.
All right. Anybody else got anything on that? Okay. We got the next question here. What do you think about the horrendous claims that carnivore lessens your life expectancy? My family has been telling me it doesn't matter how healthy I have become.
That's kind of the easiest question to answer. Number one, what study did they get that from? And we already know there is no study. And the one study we have, 29 people, 2,029 people. So if they search carnivore trial, and that, even though that's a survey study, everybody got better. So I need to find the study that shows that that's true. And I think that I would print that study. I would search that study, and I would print it and say, this is what we do know about carnivore right now. And it looks like everything got better. So I don't know where this life expectancy thing comes from. I would remind them that there are some people on the planet who have done really well. And most of us are familiar with the Mansa tribe, and think in Kenya, Africa. Some of us we're the Inuit, the Eskimos. They do pretty good just eating fish. And the buffalo, I think the Mansa tribe, they do pretty good. And when you measure their metabolic markers that would impact longevity, they do pretty good. So I think that I hate to say fake news, but it sounds like fake news. And I think when people make statements, you just want them to at least say, number one, where did you get that information? I would love to see that study. Number two, what do you tell a person who's like myself and my friend here who had irritable bowel? If I eat foods that irritate me, I will be harmed by that. When I do carnivore, I don't feel irritated. So would you want me to return to that life where I feel like I'm unhappy and my stomach's unhappy, or do you want me to stay in this place? Most importantly, is it good idea to legislate what our friends and family should eat? I think that's thank you so much. Why would we legislate that? We wouldn't. So Dr. Sean Baker and others are going to do more studies, but as you can see in front of you, this is all we have that I'm aware of that's for carnivore. And so far, if you read that study, right, and I think I even did a video about this on 88 Fox's YouTube channel. We talked about this study. It's looking pretty good, guys. So far, based on what we currently know, and this is when we do rely on observational studies. We rely on observational studies, which are survey data mining studies, when we don't have randomized controlled trials. So that's what I would say to them. I would get that study, put it in front of them and say, hey, I'm not just listening to these social media people, whether they're a doctor or not. There's a little science to support this belief. And I feel great. And isn't that all you would want for me as a family member, as a friend, for me to feel great? And the results of that study, contrary to common expectations, adults consuming a carnivore diet experience, low adverse effects and, instead reported health benefits
Oh, wow.
and high satisfaction. Breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news, man.
Breaking
They're feeling
news.
good, man. Their relationships are better than ever, man.
Right. It's like,
They're getting hit on by people of the opposite sex, man.
That's
Breaking news, man. Carnivores are thriving.
exactly. And give them grace, because they're doing this out of love. They're doing it because they care about you. They're doing it because they think this is what's best for you. But the experiment you've done on your own body proves that maybe this is a better approach. So I love it. So thank you for sharing that, my friend. Appreciate
Absolutely. It won't let me put the link in the chat. Every time I
Yes.
put it there,
it pops
deletes
out.
it.
Yeah.
But I will put that link in the description of this live when
Great
we're
idea.
done, so that people have it. And anybody that wants Dr. Hampton's link tree, that is also in the description of this live. So you can go in there and you can find all his links to follow him. Absolutely. And then I got everybody's channels scrolling across the bottom here. If you can give these guys a like, a subscribe, give them a follow, I'd appreciate it. Let me figure out where I'm at here. All right. Anybody got any comments on that before I move on?
I would just say that what Dr. Hampton was just saying is just so powerful for people, that I think it's really going to resonate with people, that when someone says to you, a family member or loved one or whatever says to you, why are you doing this? You're going to get heart disease or whatever. For you to just say to them that, look at everything I'm improving and how I was before. That's just so powerful. I'm glad that you talked that way about that.
Yeah.
There's
That's
always
the
a
best
but,
thing you
though,
can
no
sell.
matter what. They say, but you're just eating meat. I know you've lost a bunch of weight, but there's always a but, though. Like, I know you don't have sleep apnea anymore, but what, man?
I tell people, I'm like, look, I'm no longer diabetic, no longer have fatty liver. My blood pressure is the best it's ever been. I've lost 80 pounds and continuing to lose weight. I don't starve myself. I eat till I'm full. What else do you expect? I mean, that's a pretty healthy living right there, and you're worried about whether or not I'm eating red meat.
Yeah, but you're just eating meat, John.
Yeah.
There's the carnivore butt. There's always a carnivore butt, man. That's the one thing I don't like, man. I noticed too, I think it's kind of funny. Any other diet or food I mentioned eating never gets any flack, but as soon as I mention the carnivore diet, everybody turns into a dietary expert, no matter where I am.
If you went vegan, they wouldn't have a problem.
No, nobody's an expert then.
But
just when you say you eat all meat, everybody turns to an instant expert.
And it's a nutrient deficient diet by definition. So if I only eat carbs and I eliminate those other macronutrients you find in meat that are more bioavailable, that don't have anti-nutrients in them, that are not considered toxic, because there are certain plants that are toxic, they don't question that. And that's because we live in a bubble where the world thinks that that's this blue zones. I made a blue zones video. Everybody in the blue zones eats meat. So it's all a farce. And we don't have an agenda, but you can't put out Dan Buettner, who put out the blue zones on Netflix. If you haven't seen that, you can't put out information that's false and then expect people not to push back. I'm okay with you saying, I think a plant lean is better for you. But then to say that the Blue Zone's success is based on plants is a lie, because they all eat meat. So, and even the 7-day Adventists, only 15% are vegan.
Yeah, I
So
just found
let's
that
not,
out.
let's not keep putting out false information. That's why we're important, because we're here to provide clarity. And then you can look it up yourself. If somebody doesn't believe what I just said, you can just look up, vegan diet, 7-day, you can say 7-day Adventist dietary pattern, and it'll just pop up on the internet, and you'll see that they promote plant-based, but only 15% are vegan. The rest eat either fish, chicken, or something. And we need to, that way you won't get locked into this bubble where you think that's the only way to be healthy, because that's just false.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get this next question here. What do you think is the ideal diet for children? My 1-year-old son is carnivore, and my daughter, 3-year-old, fluctuates between low carb and mostly carnivore. She's picky.
and give her a kiss from all of us, an appropriate uncle kiss. So yeah, I think there are certain things that we all should be avoiding, and I think we all are aware of what those things are. We should avoid excessive sugar. I would say sugar in general. We should avoid seed oils. High fructose corn syrup is the worst artificial sweetener on the planet. So I would avoid that, and most artificial sweeteners. But I want to say that with a caveat. Like when Dr. Eric Westman treats his patients, and they can have artificial sweeteners, they will still achieve their goals. So there's an ideal, and then there's reasonable. I tend to be a allulose, monk fruit, and a stevia proponent, but there's still, things that you add. I prefer we just eat natural foods. But so I would say processed foods, the things I've just mentioned, and what's the ideal diet? I think your babies, just like us, need essential amino acids and essential fatty acids. So that's why I feel that even they would do just fine on a low carb, keto, or carnivore diet, because they're getting the essential nutrients they need. They have a little bit more. They're kind of like Dr. Paul Saladino. They're very active. They have really good metabolic health. So when they deviate from that, because they're not diabetic and hypertensive, they're not going to be harmed by that banana like a person who's diabetic, right? So you give them a little bit more wiggle room when they have their activities where they're being exposed to foods that you're not controlling. We're going to give them grace. We're not going to freak out about that. We don't want to be on the extremes, like the vegan who, can't wear leather shoes, right? Or the carnivore who, if you didn't kill the meat yourself, you're not a carnivore. We don't want to go to the extremes, right? We just want to live in a world where we're reasonable. And on what planet would a baby not do well eating, if they're keto, a steak and some asparagus? On what planet is that unhealthy? And I just, on what planet do they have to eat a slice of cake? Not the one that Maria Emmerich would show us how to make, but just a slice of cake that's made with a lot of sugar and flour, where that's essential to life. So I think we have to, when people push back, we have to say, so what in this diet do you consider unhealthy? And why do they have to eat other things that are not really real food? If I eat a bagel, it's just flour. So why would I then consider that real food? And why would I then want to feed my babies fake food when I'm sitting around eating real food? So, and when my kids ate this way, although they're 24 and 26 now, the grades literally went up an entire point for both of them. So if you want a child that's, for lack of better words, killing the other kids in terms of success, you put them on a keto carnivore diet, they're likely to thrive in ways that the other kids can't, because they're going to have better focus, concentration, memory. And they're going to be sitting in class, everybody else running to lunch, and they're like, oh, it's time for lunch. They're not even going to be thinking about lunch, because they're eating a well-formulated Dr. Kim Berry proper human diet. And that's the world I want to live in, where our kids are thriving and eating the right food. And I think once you see those benefits, there's no need to, you can ignore the noise that's going to surround you.
Just to piggyback off that, I've got a son who's still in diapers, and now that he's leaning more towards the carnivore diet, we give him an option, and he goes towards the carnivore.
Yeah.
But I've noticed he has practically no diaper rash anymore. And when he used to eat these little, they're like little plastic packs, veggie packs, and they'd have like grains and other things mixed in there, he not only would get diaper rash, but it'd take almost like a week for it to go away. And now that he's eating mostly carnivore, we barely use any cream anymore. He's just getting no diaper rash. So I just wanted to put that out there for people who I do think it is healthy for the kids.
Absolutely. And the stuff that's in those things, it could be, some people don't tolerate dairy. The additives, we can talk about that all day. That's an entire podcast, right? When you do this elimination diet and you clean up all the nonsense that they put in boxes and in those foods, then your body heals and the things that caused irritation go away. All of that irritation is from inflammation from the things that shouldn't have been in your baby's diet in the first place. So, and that's a huge, those little minor things that improve in your life, this is an example, are game changers. A miserable child makes the entire house miserable.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm happy you guys figured that out.
Any other comments from the table? All right, let's look at this one. The water here in Brazil that I buy has fluoride in it, and I know fluoride is bad for us. What do you think? Should I stop buying the water?
Yeah. Here's another nuanced question. We know that fluoride has some toxic effects on the body. We also know that fluoride can help to prevent cavities. So that's a conundrum. What some people have done is if they want, some people just say no fluoride and they're done, right? And even the fluoride, the toothpaste I use, can't think of the name right now, but I have a non-fluorinated toothpaste. It's more of a natural toothpaste because I think in life you're trying to remove toxins. One of the previous guests I had on my podcast, her book is called Dirty Girl. I know that sounds a little spicy for us guys, right? And when I search Dirty Girl, you know, the wrong stuff pops up. So when you go to Amazon, make sure Dirty Girl book so you won't get in trouble with your significant other, right? So, but she teaches us how to start detoxifying, whether it's the water, the air. And one of the things she talks about is our fluoride. What some people have done, they will say, when I see my dentist, I may get my fluoride pasted on my teeth because I think it's helpful if that's what they believe. And then they won't have fluorinated water. That way they get the benefit without getting the overexposure. Other people just go all the way out and say, I'm done with fluoride. So I do agree that I've seen studies that show that too much fluoride is toxic. But I've also seen kids who don't then have the proper human diet. They have problems with cavities. I think if you have a proper human diet, like we're talking about today, you probably are going to have great intention. I'm just going to say healthy teeth because I can't seem to pronounce that word right now. But that's what I would do. I would make a decision about how much exposure I'm going to give. And it could be if it's just the dental pasting but I would be leery of drinking fluorinated water every single day. There you go. You're good, man.
Dirty
thank
girl.
God you saved me. So you see a real person. She has clothes on.
Don't Google it, fellas. Type it in on
Amazon. Do it the right way. Put the whole title. And she's a functional medicine clinician. Very smart. I did an episode, so if you want to learn more, just type Wendy Trubo, right? Put her name and my name on YouTube. You can listen to that. But she's really good. That's a great, practical book on how to approach detox. So what we're trying to do, guys, is we're saying, we talked about what to avoid: sugar, processed food, seed oils, too many grains. But then what you want to do is you mastered your carnivore or keto diet, right? What's next, right? And the next thing may be my nest. Well, let's master sleep and stress and recover from trauma, think properly. We by listening to us, you become a positive thinker. And then what's next? And then you say, well, maybe I thought about getting a filter. I can't afford a filter for my house. Let me get a filter, Brita filter or something I can, when I go to work, I'll have something. And then you say, my toothpaste, my deodorant, whatever it is you want to do. You want to remove toxins just to increase, going back to the blue zones concept. So you want to be a centenarian, right? You just remove the things that cause harm, add the things that help, and then you just roll your dice. You may go outside and some knucklehead hits you upside the head and it's over. We don't know. But what we want to do is maximize the chance that if that knucklehead comes around you, you'll be looking like Anthony Chafee and you'll exactly like JT, and you'll be able to handle that moment. You'll have mental clarity. You'll be a little stronger. And if you need to, even if it's just a run, you'll be in a better position to be on the planet longer. And that's how I would approach it.
What's a good book you're reading?
Man, don't do that to me. I'll be honest. It's not what you would think. Because I'm learning a lot about health equity right now. The title eludes me, but I'm reading about health equity because what I'm trying to do within my health system is figure out how do we help our health system make healthcare more equitable. And so that's where I'm focused right now. And so that may not be the kind of book the average person wants to read, but that's what I'm doing right
Richest
now.
Man Who Ever Lived.
I like that. Richest Man. I like that.
King Solomon.
That's a good book. I'm reading it too.
Nice. I'll put that on my list, guys.
Yeah, I just like to see what people are reading. I
may be doing an audio. I have a long commute, about 45 minutes or so I tend to do a lot of audiobooks.
Yeah, check that one out.
I actually got your book, Dr. Tony, on audio to play after I finish the one I'm on. So
cool. Love it.
That's
Appreciate that.
In my play.
Yes.
All right, guys. Look, we are an hour and 47 minutes into this, and I respect everybody's time here. So if you got any more questions, you got 3 to 4 minutes to get them posted up. I got 4 questions on the board.
I'll try to make the responses quick.
And then after, I'm going to give you about 3-4 minutes, and then any questions that come in after that may or may not get answered depending on where we're at. So if you got a burning question that you need answered, you need to get it posted quickly. All right, let's move on to this one here. Bypass carnivore, off all meds except water pill. Is there a reason to prescribe both? Lasix?
Oh, it's aldactone.
And how do I come off of them? Every time I try, my legs blow up twice the size. Is it safe to try to come off?
Yeah, they will prescribe those together for one reason: potassium. The Lasix make you get rid of potassium, and the aldactone make you retain potassium. So they're trying to balance it out. The best way to come off, of course, is to again, we're saying that the keto and carnivore diet will make you get rid of fluid, right? And your biggest problem is a fluid problem. So again, we can either if we get rid of the poison, the carbs make you hold on to salt and water. So if you get rid of the carbs, that's going to be way more effective than Lasix and aldactone. So while you're on Lasix and aldactone, it makes sense to do both together. Some people will just do Lasix and a potassium supplement, but they probably felt like it would be nice to have another kind of water pill that'll also help remove the water while keeping you from losing potassium. If you do a carnivore keto diet and you're effective and you're doing it properly, I think that you will eventually get to the point where you may not need the Lasix. I take people off Lasix so often that it becomes normal. That's what I would focus on. And you just have to work with your clinician and say, hey, I'm doing better. My pressure's less, my swelling's less. Can you work with me to reduce the dose over time? And if you do that, you'll be fine. But I think it's okay to take both together because they're working slightly differently to keep your potassium in check.
Excellent. All right. Next question we got here. As the chef in the house, seasonings are a big piece of my life. how big of a deal are you using things like basil, garlic, mustard, Old Bay seasoning, Tony Creole seasoning?
Oh, I'm not familiar with that, but I need to be. I need some of that residual since my name's.
Right.
Here's another commentary on the Carnivore cult, right? We know that the people we love, like Dr. Anthony Chaffee, is more of a purist, right? And then we have Dr. Paul Saladino, who's obviously doing other things. So my answer to this is, if you do an elimination diet, which is carnivore, the perfect elimination diet, and then if you're one of those people who are not like Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and you don't want to do like, beef, salt, and water, right? Then you add basil. And when you do elimination diets, you add something. And we know these plants have issues. Plants are trying to kill us, is what Dr. Anthony Chaffee. But for some people, plants are not killing them. It's that hormesis, that you challenge me and you make me stronger, is a real thing for some people, not necessarily for people with irritable bowel like me and my friend here, right? We just don't tolerate stuff. But if you're a person who adds the basil back, and over 3 days, you notice things are okay, and there is a functional medicine elimination diet PDF that you can search for, and it'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. That person can then tolerate basil. So I would do it that way, because we're not trying to go to the extremes. Because what do we gain by going to the extremes? Will basil raise your blood sugar and cause hyperinsulinemia? No. So if our goal is to just be metabolically healthy, you can play around with seasonings, but I would kind of try to experiment. Maybe, I don't know how that would taste if you just do basil on something only, but you want to play with it to see what your body tolerates. And as long as you tolerate it and you want to have a little more variety in your life, I think that's okay.
Taco seasonings, same thing.
Man, but that's got a lot of stuff in it. Amen.
I know. That's why I'm asking.
But yeah, you can do that. Yeah, if you tolerate that, that's a little bit more of a gamble because it's got multiple things. But absolutely. What's your background? Are you Latin American?
No, I'm I guess German. I've never been to Germany, so I always say I'm American. So.
Okay, cool. I just checking. All right.
I do the Redmond's taco seasoning salt, which it's 0 carb.
Oh, I didn't know they had learned something every
I didn't
day.
even know that either, man.
Oh,
and
yeah,
and
great.
Redmond's, they got those that, again, because their salt comes from the right place. It's got the minerals, it's got the potassiums and things in it that Morton's doesn't have. So I'm going to check that out. And again, that's why this community is important
too.
And even the rest of my family.
Yeah, someone in the chat said the Redmond's makes a toothpaste too.
That's crazy.
They're not sure what's in it, but they said they make it.
That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, even the rest of my family that is not eating carnivore, they like the taco seasoning to have with their. I mean, it's just as good as any of the other comparable taco seasonings, except it's clean. It's a cleaner one, I guess you could call it.
Okay, that's it.
All right, Dr. H. Been hypoglycemic whole life, none since carnivore. My cardio put me on 80 milligrams of statins. Sugar went up. My PCP agreed to lower it to 40 milligrams. Tries now 83, HDL 61, LDL's 105. You react to no stats.
Yeah, it's all about the statin question. Has a lot to do with the why, and I think that the LDL doesn't concern us. The HDL looks wonderful. The triglycerides look good. Again, if you do 83 divided by 61, your triglyceride to HDL ratio looks pretty good. So from that perspective, you look wonderful. This is another person. So your numbers on its face are fine. Now, it may look different because I'm assuming these numbers are because you're on a statin, and maybe it would be different. But don't forget, the statin primarily is just focused on the LDL. So I wouldn't expect the triglycerides and HDL to change much, which means that your profile is actually looking pretty good. So what I would do is, why am I on a statin? And if they say you're diabetic, then you say, well, it sounds like you weren't because you've been hypoglycemic. This is a person who should probably just do the calcium score test. And again, if the calcium score test comes back favorable, that would be your argument along with that American Heart Association study or a position statement to say, I don't have any plaques. I'm not sure I want to take this medicine because of the risk for cognitive decline and the increased risk for diabetes. And that's what I would say, because I think you just want to be able to make a case for not being on a statin.
Anybody else got comments? I was on statin years ago, and I had to come off of it because they were causing me muscle cramps. I was on simvastatin, and I was getting severe muscle cramps that led to me gaining a whole bunch more weight back because I was exercising and all that. And because of the muscle cramps, I ended up stopped swimming. I stopped, hiking because I was having such bad muscle cramps.
Yeah, and it's common for statins to do that. Some people will take CoQ10. If you're having to transition with statins for a little bit, take a CoQ10. That tends to mitigate that a little bit as a supplement. But it is common for people to have problems with statins and have aches and cramps. And it's one of the common reasons for people to get off. Doctors will still push the envelope. But again, if you have that scan that's showing your score is 0, that'll be enough for you to justify not taking that medicine.
Outstanding. All right. Charger Mopar, if carnivore helps gain muscle, why have I been so skinny for 40 years?
Rick, come on.
Well, I've never been, you should see me when I was in elementary school, man. Me and my wife, man, so I can say this publicly, we had the skinniest legs, and like Anthony Chafee, although I'm not a huge guy, I find that I don't have to exercise as often by eating this. So it is a little bit of a conundrum when you're trying to get bigger and you're on a diet that's essentially keto, right? But I find that people just don't eat enough protein, to be honest with you. So the things I would do is, are you eating enough protein? And if you look at when I was in school, they'd say, 0.8 per kilogram of body, weight and all of these things. And we know that we're very comfortable going much higher, 1.5 per kilogram or 2. I would go higher on the protein for sure. But I would also consider you can't build muscle if you're not doing the things to build muscle, right? So the question is, are we doing resistance exercise? For example, I follow Dr. Ben Bokikio. It's very simple. Dr. Ben Bokikio, I did a video with him. And so if you search Dr. Ben and Dr. Hampton, you'll see that video. And in the notes, there's a way to do his exercises, 15 minutes twice a week. That's all it is, with bands, with a total gym or at the gym. The key is to go slow, take the muscles to failure. And once you're done with that exercise, you're done. So if you take the muscle to failure, the research shows that you don't have to do it again that day. And the research also shows that if you're going to let that muscle heal, recover, and grow, you need to skip 2 days. So if we did it today, we're recording this on a Sunday, you wouldn't exercise again until Wednesday. The muscles had a chance to heal, recover, and grow, and then you do it again. Now, in your brain, you're like, that's not enough. But if you're trying to grow muscle in a skinny person, you don't want to over-exercise. I would not go out and then run a marathon. I would not, go. You can stretch, do those exercises, and give your body time to heal. But you may want to increase your protein. That's where I would start.
So you don't need any carbs at all for bodybuilding?
In my opinion, no. Now, if you're trying to get ready for the next, match, right? And you're like there can be benefits of increasing muscle faster in that setting. But if you're thinking long-term and just trying to be healthy, I think it's overrated. And it's not necessary. And I just think that in the right setting, yes, but for most people who are watching this, that's overrated.
Okay. Yeah, it was a Hulk Hogan interview. He was talking about his bodybuilding, and he said he has a little bit of carbs, not much.
Yeah, and again, in a metabolically healthy person, okay. I mean, see, we're not going to the extremes, and we do know that it helps in the short term, but for so many people, it's a rabbit hole you have to be careful with.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. One last question here.
Make it a good one.
Ketones break a fast.
Well, I had a chance to spend time with Roxana at Keto Palooza, and she did something blasphemous while I was on her channel. She has by the way, subscribe to her channel because she is the socialite. Tia is another person who hangs out with her. They're like low carb socialites and they connect people. And we really want to do a shout out to them because they really help to make people aware of other people that could benefit them. So she has a new channel. I think her first video with a kind of an interview was with Dr. Kim Berry. Then she interviewed me. And what she did that almost led to a divorce is that she said she had a crush on me on YouTube. I got 30 years of marriage I'm trying to protect. So Roxana, I owe you one for that.
That's the carnivore diet, man.
That's right.
Bottom off, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep them away from you, right? So, but Roxana, I think the answer to your question is going back to being a purist or not. I think that if you're a purist, you would just, you wouldn't even drink water, right? But if you're drinking water and fasting, that's like purist. But do exogenous ketones, if you get a clean exogenous ketone supplement, and you may do it because you want mental clarity, people who are at risk for dementia may do it, people who are having epilepsy may do it. If you're doing it for those reasons, I would not stop using exogenous ketones because it's not, somehow taking you out of ketosis. I think that's an overrated thing. It is important that people understand, however, that your body goes into ketosis by carb restricting. So you don't really need to take MCT oil, which is, concentrated coconut oil form of ketones, or the exogenous ketones. They tend to be expensive. You don't need to do that. But if you feel better, let's just say you're not a coffee person and you want something to give you a little bit of a boost, exogenous ketones work really well. But I do not consider it breaking a fast because they tend to be clean. And if you look at the label, it'll probably say 0 carbs. So that's kind of my opinion. I want to say one thing real quick. I'm a doctor. I have a master's in nutrition and functional medicine. I'm board certified in obesity medicine, but it's still expert opinion. If I don't have a randomized controlled trial in front of me, it's expert opinion. So I want to say that out loud so that when you hear people, it's not like the Bible, it's not like the gold standard. This is just a doctor who lives in this space who has an opinion. It would make more sense to listen to a doctor in a low carb, keto, or carnivore space if you're doing that than to listen to a vegan who has an opinion about low carb, keto, or carnivore. And a doctor who has credentials. But I would argue that Brian and Randy and JT and John are very astute as well. So when they have an opinion, I would listen to that too, because when I used to listen to the Black Carnivore, she was not a doctor, but she knew a ton about, she probably even today knows way about carnivore than me. So have people in front of you who give advice, trust but verify, and use that as a guidepost to get you started, but don't consider it the gold standard.
Outstanding. Well, Dr. Tony Hampton, I appreciate you being on here. I appreciate these guys for being on here. What I'm going to do is we're going to work around the table here, and we'll come to you at the backside to close this out, sir. But we appreciate you guys all being here. It's been 2 hours and 3 minutes. We are sitting at 64 in the chat right now. We've been up as high as 70 or 80 at one point. So it's good to have people in here, and this message will continue on as it gets replayed. So I'm going to pick on JT and put him on the big screen here. JT, what's your closing thoughts, sir?
Well, I want to thank Dr. Tony for just spending some time with us who have got lower awareness than he does. And I do want to say you're probably attracting all these people, man. You got one of those great smiles, man. It's hard to turn off. So you're that's probably half your problem there. But I just want to say what's on my heart is I just want us to focus on just being as healthy as we can be, just doing what works for you, and encouraging people. You know, if they were carnivore and they're going keto, support them. If they're keto going carnivore, support them. You know, and like Dr. Tony says, there's no reason to get extreme about things. Just focus on community, and being part of that community is supporting each other and loving each other. Like Carrie says from Homestead Hollow, rising tide lifts all ships. And I really think we should just do that. Just keep lifting each other up.
Outstanding. Let's go, Brian.
All right. First of all, Dr. Tony, thank you for being on today and sharing your expertise with us. Very much appreciative. For everybody out there, I just want to say that keep in mind, you want to use the community to learn from everybody's experiences, but your experience is not going to be the same as someone else's. So you're going to watch a video, let's say, and somebody's going to talk about how this happened for them. And you're going to be like, well, that didn't really happen for me. Something else happened. That's okay, because everyone is different. And remember that while you're finding out what our experiences are, you're going to kind of get a better idea of how to learn what to listen to your own body. And then that's how you get your own experiences, and what works exactly right for you. So don't get stuck when somebody says, you have to eat this way, you can't have this or whatever. Don't get stuck on that, because for you, it might be different. And eating that one thing that didn't work for somebody else might be the right thing for you. So just, learn from everybody else's experiences and put that into your own research in your own body, and figure out what is best for your body, and work it that way.
Thank you, Brian. All right. Randy, the new guy on the block. How you doing, bud?
Good, man. Hey, thanks. Just want to say thanks again. Great honor to be here with all you guys. I've learned a ton even in this 2 hours, and just really super honored to be on with Dr. Tony and Dr. Hampton. I'm sorry I didn't get to meet you. I was at Keto Palooza.
Oh, wow.
I was there Friday and early Saturday morning. We had to bail out to get back home, but maybe I'll catch you at another one when we're. I'm sure there'll be some more down the road, but. I just want to echo kind of what everybody's saying. Let's keep this community thing going. Let's keep growing, and let's keep assimilating this army. That's we're going to change the narrative of what's going on in this country with health, and what has been told to us all along. We're going to change and show people what the right way is, as Dr. Barry says, the proper human diet, and we're on it. And that's all. And I look forward to maybe hanging out with you guys again one day.
All right, guys. So this has been an awesome 2 hours. I have to thank Dr. Tony again for being here. I have to say this about Dr. Tony. I emailed him and he responded within like 10 minutes with, he was ready to do it. I appreciate that. I reached out to, several doctors. Next Sunday, we're having Dr. Kiltz on here. I'm looking forward to that conversation. I respect these guys because, they're standing out in a medical field where everybody else is going the opposite direction, and they're like a fish trying to swim upstream. And so being on here and putting themselves out there is really important to all of us. It helps, it helps get the message out, but it helps show that there are some people, in the medical field who are saying, you know what, we've been going the wrong direction for too many years, and we need to start, going against the tide. So I appreciate you guys. If you haven't, please like and subscribe to these guys' channels. It helps us, to get our message out. It helps to spread the word to other places. And we really appreciate you guys sticking with us for the full 2 hours. And Dr. Tony, thank you, sir. And we're going to put you out here. You can give some closing thoughts.
Yeah, I want to, first of all, Dr. Kills is amazing. So I'll try to chime in. He's one of the people, he's very spiritual. And when you talk to him, you just feel a warmth. And I appreciate him. I don't do like a religious thing on my channel, but he does. I'm going to tell you, we need everybody spreading the message in a way that resonates with them. So I really appreciate him being who he is. I appreciate all of you guys, JT, Randy, John, Brian, taking me back to the backwoods, a city boy. I appreciate you. I feel more comfortable with the backwoods after today's conversation. Just putting that out there too. And for those who are checking us out, why do we push carnivore? Why am I courageous enough to do this in a large health system where it's not common? Because I know it works. I know it's easy. I know, as we shared earlier, supported by at least one study. I know that it helps my patients with autoimmune disease. I know it helps patients who have neurodegenerative diseases and mental health challenges. And of course, metabolic diseases. I know that meats do not have toxic chemicals in them. I know that meat is the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. And I also know that it's the most bioavailable food you can eat, meaning if I eat spinach, I may get 3% of the iron. If I eat a steak, I get 35% of the iron. They didn't teach me that even in medical school. So now we can remove the fears and take off the chains. And in the communities of color, we don't need to do this plant thing that Dr. Sebi taught us on YouTube. The people who live the longest are in Hong Kong, and they eat a steak and a half per person per day on average. So we already know the people who live the longest eat meat, but it's okay to eat plants if that's your thing. All we're saying is we want to live in a world where everybody has an opportunity to make a decision about what's best for them. And we honor that and we respect that. And if we can live in a world like that, and think about the things that are going on in the world with the wars and stuff, if we can just respect the people on the other side of the aisle, wouldn't the world be a better place? And if we have a way to heal people that's working, wouldn't we want to live in a world where they're allowed to heal? Wouldn't we want to live in a world where we don't rely on medicines, procedures, and surgeries to heal them? We also want to live in a world, if I break my leg, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to get it fixed. But I also know that when that leg heals, it's going to heal better by having a dietary pattern that has a history of healing. So as you enjoy this episode, I hope that you share it with someone, get to know my co-guests, get to know me, and let's continue to at least maybe once a day, every other day, taste a little bit of what we're trying to share. We guarantee you that that's all the coaching you'll probably need. And for those who need more, we talked about what you can do. I feel privileged to be on this stage with you guys, and I'm looking forward to being on each of you guys' channels in the future. And we're going to keep spreading this message. So thank you for the honor to be on this live stream today.
Absolutely. And I would offer that you can come back on here anytime you want and be on part of the roundtable anytime that you want to.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, I'm going to throw up my closing screen here. If everybody can mute their mics for about 10 seconds or so, and I'll end the stream and then we'll talk after.